You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 8th part of What If Naruto Enters K-Pop Demon Hunters. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Naruto fell to his knees before her, chest heaving, tears spilling unchecked. He slammed his fist into the pier until it cracked, his voice breaking into a howl. Then cut me down. He looked up at her, his face twisted into that wide, broken smile, tears carving lines through it. Do it, Roomie. Strike me down. If I'm no better than Gyama's servant, then kill me. Kill me now. The demon energy in his voice rattled the air, making Zoey stumble back, Mira grab her arm. Strike me down, he screamed again, his voice vibrating with fury and grief. Because I'd rather die by your hand than live knowing you see me as nothing but a coward. Roomie's whole body trembled, tears blurring her vision, but her hands stayed frozen at her sides. Naruto laughed jagged, empty, nothing of joy in it. He forced himself to his feet, his smile stretching until it hurt to look at. You can't do it, he whispered, broken. Not because you believe in me. But because you pity me. He turned, cloak snapping in the night wind, his shoulders trembling though he forced them square. Every step away from her sounded like a blade cutting through flesh. I thought you saw me, he said, not turning back. I thought you were the one who finally saw me. The sword at her feet quivered, humming with the echo of a vow shattered. Naruto's voice, raw and breaking, carried as he disappeared into the dark. You were my North Star, but even stars burn out. The silence that followed was brutal. Roomie's breath hitched, her knees weak, but she didn't move. Couldn't. Zoe's tears fell silently, Myra's fists clenched white around her knife. And somewhere, hidden in shadow, Janu smiled wider. Naruto's last words cracked the night like thunder. You were my North Star, but even stars burn out. He turned, cloak flaring, and vanished into the dark before the tears on his face even dried. Naruto. Roomie's scream ripped out of her chest, raw and desperate. Her legs moved before her mind caught up, feet pounding against the pier as she lunged after him. But an iron grip clamped on her wrist. Mira, let me go. Roomie's voice was hoarse, wild, her eyes locked on the spot where he'd disappeared. She pulled hard, hard enough to hurt, but Mira didn't budge. No, Mira hissed, her own eyes burning though her face stayed hard. Not like this. If you chase him now, with everything raw and bleeding, you'll only drive the knife deeper. Roomie's chest heaved, her pattern sparking erratic violet across her skin. You don't understand, he thinks, her words crumbled into a sob, her knees nearly giving out. Zoey hovered nearby, wide-eyed, hugging herself, tears strkng her cheeks. Mira, she loves him. You can't just. I do understand, Mira snapped, her voice sharp but trembling underneath. She tightened her grip on Roomie's arm, holding her like she'd hold someone standing at the edge of a cliff. That's exactly why you can't go. He's not listening right now. He's gone. You'll only break each other more. Roomie shook her head violently, tears streaming, struggling against Myra's hold. But if I let him go like this, what if he never comes back? Myra's jaw clenched, her own throat tight. She pulled Roomie into her chest, pinning her arms in a rough embrace even as Roomie kicked weakly against it. Then you'll wait until he's ready. Because if you chase him like this, you'll lose him forever. Roomie finally sagged, trembling, sobs tearing out of her as she buried her face in Myra's shoulder. Zoey wiped at her own eyes, voice small, shaky. He's hurting so bad and she is too. Why does it have to be like this? The pier was quiet again, except for Roomie's broken cries and the distant crash of waves against the pilings. Mira kept her hold firm, her own tears slipping free despite her stone mask. In the shadows, unseen, Janu's smile twisted darker. Naruto collapsed when he reappeared on the rooftop, knees nearly buckling beneath him. He didn't need to look around. You don't forget the place where you once stood ready to end it all. This was the same building, the same ledge, the same wind that once tempted him to jump. He stumbled forward, and a broken laugh tore out of him. His cheeks ached from the effort of smiling, stretched too wide, too empty. Because he remembered. He remembered Sai. After Ino died, Sai had smiled. Not out of joy. Not out of betrayal. But out of unbearable pain. A twisted, fragile thing, the kind of smile you wear when the grief is too much to show, when crying feels impossible. Sakura had thought he was happy, that he had moved on too easily. She'd wanted to tear into him, to make him admit the truth. But Naruto had held her back. Not because Sai deserved protection. But because Naruto knew that smile. It was the smile of a man who had lost his son and was drifting, untethered in the void. The smile of someone who couldn't cry, so they smiled instead because if they didn't, they'd crumble completely. Naruto had worn that smile once. Back when the villagers hated him. Back when loneliness clawed at his ribs. Back when the only way to survive was to pretend. To grin so wide, so bright, that maybe it would hurt less. That maybe no one would see the cracks. And here he was again. That same smile stretched across his face now, brittle and sharp. Not because of villagers. Not because of loneliness. Not because of fate. But because of her. Because of Roomie. Naruto crumpled forward, his palms scraping against the rooftop as sobs ripped out of him, broken and jagged. The city lights blurred into streaks of color, his vision too wet to hold them steady. He pressed his forehead against the concrete, breath hitching, shoulders trembling like a boy again, a boy alone, unwanted, screaming into an empty night. Kakashi, his voice cracked on the name. Why aren't you here to tell me to get up? To tell me I'm not weak? His fists clenched, nails biting his palms. You always knew when I was falling. You always caught me. Where are you now? The rooftop stayed silent. His chest heaved, and the next name tore out of him raw. Erosenin Jiraiya, he squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head. You'd know what to say. Some stupid joke first, then the truth hidden under it. You'd tell me to keep fighting, to stop being pathetic. You'd tell me I wasn't alone. His breath hitched hard, a sob shuddering through his body. But I am. I am, and I hate it. His fingers curled against the cold concrete until they hurt, like pain might keep him grounded. Aayaka-sensei, Naruto's voice collapsed into a whisper. You'd drag me to ramen and tell me it's gonna be okay, even if it's a lie. You'd smile like you believed it. And maybe I'd believe it too. Gods, I just need someone to say it again. Just once. The words hung in the air, unanswered. The silence cut deeper than any blade. Naruto's whole body shook, his chest burning with every breath. His voice dropped even lower, breaking. Sakura, he choked on the name, pressing a fist against his mouth to smother the sob clawing out. I need you. Just this once. You'd know. You'd see right through me, the smile, the jokes, all of it. You'd hold me, no judgment. Just love. Like a sister, like a pillar holding me up when I can't stand anymore. He collapsed fully then, curling in on himself, cheek pressed to the rooftop, tears soaking into the dirt and concrete. His smile had vanished, nothing left but a boy's broken sobs echoing into the night sky. Why can't I be happy? He whispered again, softer this time, like it was a prayer he no longer believed in. The ghosts didn't answer. The city below kept moving, uncaring. The rooftop was just another rooftop. And Naruto lay there, shaking, alone with the weight of his own heart. Naruto stayed there for what felt like hours, curled on the rooftop, his body racked with sobs until there was nothing left in him but the shallow rasp of breath. His cheek pressed to the cold concrete, his arms hung loose, his heart so hollow it barely beat. Something cool brushed his palm. His fingers twitched, and when he lifted his hand, it was there, the glass flower. Blue petals wrapped in red, the fragile gift that once cradled Huang's memory. He didn't remember pulling it from his soul, but somehow it had found him, as if the grief itself had called it out. Naruto's throat tightened. Huang. The flower trembled, and then the petals warped again, stretching, glowing, bending until light burst out between his fingers. The glass melted into warmth, tails of molten crimson fire blooming one by one. The kitsune emerged, whole, alive, radiant, and for the first time all night, the cold eased. Naruto cradled it, his body shaking as sobs tore loose again, but these weren't the same jagged, breaking cries. These were softer, aching, the kind of cries that came when you finally stopped holding yourself together. He pressed his forehead to the fox's fur, its warmth soaking into his bones. "You're still here," he whispered, voice shredded raw. "Even when everyone else is gone, even when I can't hold it together, you're still here." The kitsune shifted in his arms, 9 tails curling around him, wrapping him tight as though it was shielding him from the world. In its warmth, he swore he felt her again, Huang's quiet strength, her rare laugh, her sharp scolding laced with hidden kindness. The memory of tea left at his elbow. The rare softness in her eyes. Naruto broke apart against it, sobbing into its fur. "I can't do this alone. Don't let me do this alone." And the kitsune didn't answer in words. It didn't have to. Its warmth was the answer, steady, enduring, unshaken. Naruto clung to it until exhaustion dragged him down, curled against the glow like a child clinging to the last piece of family he had left. For the first time since the pier, the rooftop didn't feel like a grave. It felt like a vigil, a reminder that even shattered as he was, something still held him. Someone refused to let him be alone in the dark. Roomie's legs gave out the moment Naruto disappeared into the night. She staggered forward, desperate to chase him, but Mira's grip was iron, holding her back. "Don't," Mira whispered harshly, though her own voice shook. "Not right now." Roomie clawed at her arm, tears strkng down her face. "Let me go, please, I have to." "No," Mira snapped, then softened, pulling her closer. "You'll only make it worse. He's not in a place to hear you." Her strength finally crumbled, and the fight bled out of her. Roomie sagged against her, sobbing so hard her words came out broken. I didn't mean it, gods, I didn't." Zoey slipped to her other side, her arms wrapping around Roomie's shoulders, trying to hold her together when she was shattering. "Shoo. We've got you. Just breathe, Roo. Just breathe." They half carried, half led her through the quiet streets, Roomie stumbling between them like her legs couldn't remember how to move. By the time they reached the Huntrix penthouse, her tears hadn't slowed, her whole body trembled with the force of them. Inside, Zoey pulled her straight to the couch, sitting beside her, rubbing circles on her back while Roomie buried her face against her shoulder, sobbing into her shirt. Zoe's own eyes brimmed, but she forced herself to stay steady, whispering nonsense comforts, anything to keep her from falling deeper. Mira stood at the window, her arms crossed tight, staring out at the city lights that flickered far below. She couldn't erase the image of Naruto's face, the way his smile had broken into something hollow and dangerous, the way his patterns had flared crimson. She had never seen him like that, and it chilled her more than she wanted to admit. She turned back, her chest heavy as she watched Roomie collapse further into Zoe's arms. Roomie was their sister, their heart, and right now she was in pieces. Mira pushed down her own fear, her own anger, because what mattered most in this moment wasn't her opinion of demons, or of Janu, or even of Naruto. It was this. Being here. Holding Roomie together until she could breathe again. Rest, Mira said finally, her voice softer than she thought she could make it. We'll figure it out tomorrow. But when she turned back to the window, her thoughts betrayed her. Naruto, wherever you are, please hold on. Please don't let this break you. Naruto stayed slumped on the rooftop, the city lights a blur through the haze of his tears. His body shook with every breath, silent sobs tearing through him as he pressed the fading warmth of the kitsune close. The mask was gone, the smile broken. Only the hollow ache remained, raw and consuming. Across the city, Roomie collapsed into Zoey's arms, her sobs spilling out in ragged gasps. She clung to her like a lifeline, fingers knotting in her shirt, her words tumbling out between breaths. I didn't mean it, I didn't mean it. Zoey hushed her gently, voice trembling as she rocked her. Myra's hand stayed firm on Roomie's shoulder, her gaze sharp even through the sorrow. She wanted to run after Naruto, to find him, but right now Roomie was breaking in front of her and someone had to hold her together. Two places, two hearts unraveling in the same hour. Above them, the Han moon quavered. Its glow faltered faintly against the night sky, threads of crimson and violet rippling across its surface. What had once burned steady now wavered like a flame caught in wind, not shattered, but strained, scarred. And as Naruto's tears fell into the rooftop and Roomie's sobs shook the walls of the penthouse, the great seal trembled as if it, too, bore the weight of their fracture. The next morning crept in too quietly. None of them had really slept, not with Roomie sobbing herself empty against Zoey's shoulder until dawn, not with Mira pacing the penthouse like a wolf that smelled blood but couldn't find the kill. By mid-morning, Roomie finally stood. Her eyes were swollen but dry, her patterns dim like embers under ash. I need to see him, she said, voice hollow but steady. Zoey and Mira followed her downstairs. The moment Roomie unlocked the apartment door, her stomach dropped. The air was too still, the space too bare. Kakashi's food bowl sat untouched. The sheets were twisted, half pulled from the bed. Drawers hung open, gaps where clothes had been. On the table, under the strap of his sword sheath, lay a scrap of paper. Roomie's hands shook as she picked it up, but she already knew what it would say. I need time. That was all. Her chest tightened. No goodbye. No explanation. Just distance. Zoey gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth. He left. Mira took the note from Roomie. Her jaw tightening as she read. Not left. Not yet. He said time. That means he's coming back. Roomie laughed bitterly, pressing the note to her chest. You don't understand. Time is the one thing he's always given everyone else. If he's asking for it now, she trailed off, her body trembling. Myra's voice cut sharp. No, what I understand is you're still clinging to that demon like he's the answer. Janu doesn't need saving, Roomie. He needs putting down. Roomie's eyes flared, her voice snapping back sharper than the crack in her chest. And Naruto? Everyone said he was doomed too. That he'd be nothing but a monster. And look at him now. Don't you dare tell me people can't change. Mira stepped closer, glaring. Naruto never chose his curse. He fought it every DMN day. Janu handed his soul to Jaima. That's not redemption, that's loyalty. You can't save someone who doesn't want saving. I don't care, Roomie said, fierce but trembling. She straightened her shoulders, voice hollow but unyielding. If there's even a chance, I'll fight for it. For him. For Naruto. For all of it. Mira shook her head, exhaling hard, her frustration boiling. You're going to tear yourself apart. And when Naruto finds out, he'll tear the world down with him. You think you're saving Janu, but you're gambling everything you have left. Zoey shifted nervously, hugging her arms like she wanted to disappear. I really hate it when you two fight like this. But neither stopped. The apartment felt emptier than ever, Naruto's presence reduced to nothing but the faint smell of sweat and steel. And in that silence, it was clear, Roomie wasn't weak. She was broken, yes. Hollow. But her conviction burned like a blade sharp enough to cut herself before anyone else. Naruto staggered when his feet hit the floor of the apartment. The teleport had drained him more than it should have, his body still aching from the rooftop and from everything that came before. The space smelled faintly of her lavender soap, ink from her lyric sheets, the warmth of last night still clinging to the sheets. For a second, his knees almost buckled. He closed his eyes and reached out with his senses. Upstairs. Still in the penthouse with Zoey and Mira. Good. His chest heaved with relief, though it didn't feel like breathing. More like drowning just above the surface. He didn't think he could face her yet, not with the words still raw on his tongue, not with the image of her hand in Janu's still stabbing him like a blade. His eyes landed on the table. The half-empty teacup she had left, a folded scarf, Kakashi curled tight in the corner, lifting his head as if to ask where Roomie was. Naruto crouched, running a hand down the pup's back, but even Kakashi seemed subdued, sensing the storm in him. I can't, bud, Naruto whispered, voice hoarse. Not right now. He stood again, dragging open drawers, pulling out clothes, not much, just enough to stuff into a pack. His movements were sharp, mechanical, the way they always were when he forced himself not to feel. When he paused at the door, cloak slung over his shoulder, his gaze lingered on the small details: her shoes lined neatly by the wall, the half-finished sketch on the counter. All the little signs of a life he wanted more than anything. His hand clenched on the knob. His throat burned. I just need time, he muttered, scribbling the words on a scrap of paper and weighing it down with the strap of his sword sheath. With a flare of energy, he was gone again. The apartment fell silent, the note sitting in the empty air like a wound. Naruto reappeared in the middle of the city, but not just anywhere, the one place he had left untouched, the ghost of his old life. The ramen shop. Or what was left of it. The lot stood empty now, weeds breaking through the cracks in the pavement. The foundation still traced faint outlines where the counter and stools had once been. He stood there a long moment, staring at it, letting the silence press against him. With slow, heavy steps, he walked to where the counter used to stand. His hand hovered, then pressed to the ground. A pulse of demon energy rippled outward, and the earth answered him. A low click. The hidden hatch unlocked. Naruto knelt, pulling it open. The scent of dust and old wood greeted him, along with the cramped shadows of the bunker below. He dropped down, landing in the space that had once been both lifeline and prison. The shelves still stood, lined with ramen cups stacked in neat rows, a ridiculous stash that spoke of who he used to be. He grabbed a few without thinking, shoving them into his pack. Comfort food for a man with no comfort left. Then his gaze shifted to the desk at the back. Simple. Sturdy. And hers. Huang's. Naruto's hand shook as he opened the drawer and placed the fragile glass flower inside, setting it carefully against the wood. He lingered there, staring at it, her memory locked away in the place where he'd once hidden from the world. Just before turning to leave, his eyes caught on the frame propped up beside the desk. The photo. Him and Roomie, last year, after the fight with Indra. He still remembered the shock of the crowd when she had thrown herself into his arms and kissed him on stage, cameras flashing, the whole world watching. In that moment, it had felt like them against everything, lovers unshaken, unbreakable. His lips trembled as he picked up the frame. The smile that came wasn't joy. It was hollow, bittersweet, an echo of something already gone. What happened to us? He whispered, thumb brushing the edge of the glass. His throat closed as he forced the words out, voice cracking on the last. Although I'm upset, I miss you, North Star. The silence swallowed him whole. His hand lingered one last time on the photo before he set it back down, this time face down, as if even the memory was too heavy to carry. He slung his pack over his shoulder and climbed out of the bunker, sealing it shut with a faint flare of chakra. When he looked up at the city skyline, he knew where his feet were taking him. A place he hadn't gone in over a year. The graveyard. Naruto stood before the first grave, the one that always felt like home in its own way. Miss Huang. Her name was etched cleanly into the stone, though the flowers left months ago had long since withered. He crouched down, brushing his fingers gently across the inscription, a tender smile tugging at his lips despite the ache in his chest. "You were the first person in this world who gave me a chance," he whispered, his voice soft as the wind. "The first who saw more than the monster. More than the burden." His hand lingered, stroking the stone as if it were her cheek. The weight in his chest shifted for a moment, lightened just enough for him to smile. "Thanks, Huang, for last night. I needed that." He let his demon energy pool in his fingertips, brushing over the stone. The grime and weeds melted away as if they had never been, leaving the grave spotless, glowing faintly under the patterns rippling across his skin. But even as he cleaned the grave, his patterns betrayed him. Once a brilliant violet, the glow had shifted duller, streaked with crimson. Like a flower slowly losing its petals, one by one, a vow unraveling. Naruto bent forward and pressed a kiss to the cool stone, letting his lips linger. Then he stood, steadying himself with a deep breath, and turned. The next grave waited. This one was harder. Een. His steps faltered before he forced himself closer, each one like wading into cold water. By the time he knelt, his chest was already trembling. His throat burned. The sight of his name carved into stone cracked him open. The tears came fast, sliding hot down his cheeks. He didn't bother wiping them away. "Een," his voice broke. "I could use some of your advice right now. Gods, I wish you were here. You always knew what to say, what path to take when I was blind." His words collapsed into silence, choked off by grief. A shift in the air. Then, a clear voice cut through the stillness. "I can listen too, you know." Naruto's head jerked up. Seline. She stood at the edge of the graves, her usual sharpness softened, her posture steady, but her eyes, for once, carried something he had never seen in them before. Understanding. She didn't move closer, not yet, but her gaze was fixed on him, unflinching. "If you need someone. If you're breaking, you don't have to do it alone." For a long moment, Naruto said nothing. Just stared at her, broken open at Yin's grave, caught between the ache of the past and the fragile thread of comfort offered in the present. Naruto knelt in the dirt before the grave, his body trembling as if the stone itself pressed the weight of the world onto his back. His hands dug into the soil, nails splitting, blood seeping into the earth. Tears blurred his vision until the name etched into the stone was almost unrecognizable. "I'm so sorry," he choked, his voice jagged. "I'm sorry about your sacrifice for me. You shouldn't be here. You should have lived. I never deserved that second chance you gave me. I never deserved you." His forehead pressed against the cold stone, his shoulders shaking violently. "And now I've gone and let you down anyway." His words poured out like broken glass. "I promised I'd honor you. That I'd carry it all, that I'd never waste what you gave me. But look at me. I'm screaming at the woman I love. I'm doubting her, doubting us. I'm shattering everything we built because I'm too weak to hold steady. You gave your life so I could have one, and what do I do with it? I ruin it. I ruin her. I ruin myself." Naruto's breath caught on a sob. "I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to stay strong when even she—" His throat closed, but the words forced their way out, whisper thin, "when even she makes me feel like I'm nothing." His chest convulsed, the sound of grief clawing out of him raw. "I thought she was the one thing I could trust. My rock. My compass. My North Star. But now," his voice broke into silence, his tears falling hard against the earth, "now I don't even know who I am without her. He lifted a trembling hand, tracing the carved letters like they might anchor him. I don't deserve you, Een. I don't deserve your sacrifice. I don't deserve the chance you gave me. And yet I'm still here, failing, over and over again. His head dropped, his voice cracking into a whisper, why can't I just be happy? Why do I keep losing everything? A shadow moved beside him. He hadn't even noticed her appear next to him, but Seline was there, kneeling quietly. She didn't interrupt, didn't lecture, didn't offer platitudes. She simply reached out, her hand sliding into his. Her touch was warm, steady, grounding, the kind of presence that asked for nothing but gave everything. Naruto didn't resist. Couldn't. For the first time since Sakura, he let himself break in front of another person. No mask. No smile. No bravado. Just Naruto, shattered and sobbing, clinging to the dirt and to Seline's hand as though it was the only tether keeping him from slipping into the dark. And Seline stayed. Silent. Understanding. A mother's steadiness in the night while the boy who carried the weight of two worlds finally admitted he couldn't carry himself. Naruto's sobs slowed to ragged breaths, his forehead still pressed against the cold stone. His hand trembled in Seline's, clinging like a child afraid to let go. Do you still love her? She asked softly. Naruto sniffled, voice hoarse. Of course. Gods, of course I do. Seline nodded, her eyes steady, her tone calm but certain. You know you were the first person she let see her patterns. Except me. And I was the one who taught her to keep them hidden, to protect herself. But with you, she didn't hide. She saw something in you. Something that made her trust. And she saw something else too, that you were hurting, same as her. Naruto's breath hitched, his hands clenching into the dirt again. Seline's gaze softened, drifting toward Yin's name etched in stone. And so did he. I may not have spoken to him in those last years, but I knew him. He was my husband once. And I can tell you this, he never doubted a decision in his life. If he gave himself for you, it wasn't hesitation. It wasn't mistake. It was because he believed you were worth it. And he would never regret it. Naruto squeezed his eyes shut, the weight of her words cutting through the storm in his chest. So keep your head high, Seline said, her voice firm now, like a hand pulling him back from the edge. Even if your world feels like it's crumbling, you are not alone. Not then, not now, not ever. Naruto broke again, but this time it wasn't the hollow collapse of a man shattering. It was the release of someone who, for the first time in years, felt seen, held not by duty, not by expectation, but by a quiet truth he couldn't ignore. Naruto's shoulders shook as the last of his tears slipped into the dirt. His hand lingered on Yin's name, fingers tracing the grooves as if the letters might give him strength. Seline's touch stayed steady on his other hand, patient, letting him crumble without judgment. When he finally lifted his head, his voice cracked. Why are you here, Seline? You didn't just happen to show up at Yin's grave. She met his eyes, calm but firm. No. I didn't. From her cloak, she pulled a sealed envelope, wax-stamped with the sigil of the Hunters Association. The paper caught the light faintly, heavier than it should have been. Naruto stared at it like it was poison. What is this? Your first mission, she said, pressing it into his trembling hands. You've been named the Devourer. The Spear. That means the moment you finished the trials, the moment you survived, the world started looking for you. And now it needs you. His grip tightened, knuckles whitening, the edge of the envelope bending under his fist. His throat burned. I can't, he swallowed hard, shaking his head. I can't even breathe right now. You want me to fight? To protect anyone? I can't even hold on to the one person his voice broke before he could say it. Seline's voice softened, but she didn't let him retreat. Naruto. You can shatter later. You can bleed later. But right now, the innocent are still in danger. Gi-ma isn't pausing for your heartbreak. The demons aren't waiting for you to heal. People out there are praying for someone to come. And like it or not, you're the one they're praying for. Naruto closed his eyes, tears stinging again as he pressed the envelope against his chest, right over the ache. Yin's grave beneath him, Huang's memory still fresh, Roomie's words cutting like glass, everything pressed into him at once until he thought he'd suffocate. But the voices of the dead whispered in the silence. Yin's sacrifice. Huang's trust. Jiraiya's lessons. Even Sakura's knowing gaze. All of them told him the same thing, stand. He opened his eyes. They burned crimson violet, flaring through the haze of tears. I'll go, he whispered, his voice hoarse but unshakable. Doesn't matter if I'm breaking. Doesn't matter if I'm hollow. If they need me, I'll go. Seline nodded once, approval hidden behind her steady expression. She squeezed his hand, firm and motherly, then let go. Naruto rose slowly from his knees, the envelope clutched tight, the weight of the mission sinking into his bones. His patterns glowed faintly against the morning light, crimson bleeding through the violet, cracked, scarred, but still burning. He looked back at Yin's grave one last time, whispering, I'll carry it. Even if it kills me. Then he turned from the headstone, the path already chosen for him. Naruto broke the wax seal with a thumb, the parchment unfolding in his shaking hands. His eyes skimmed the words, each line cutting sharper than the last. Assignment, Shikoku Prefecture. Status, Red Zone. Objective, reinforce stationed hunters. Eliminate high-class demon threats. Protect civilians at all costs. The final line made his jaw tighten. Commander assigned, Uzumaki Naruto, Devourer. He stared at it, chest hollow. His first mission, and they were already throwing him into command. He almost laughed. Almost. Seline's voice broke the silence. It's a small fishing village. Remote. Vulnerable. The hunters stationed there are good, but they've been pushed to their limits. They need someone who can carry the weight they can't. Someone who can be the rock. Naruto folded the letter with careful precision, slipping it into his cloak. His voice came low, steady now, though the edges frayed. Then I'll be their rock. Even if I'm breaking inside, I'll stand for them. Seline only nodded. Her eyes said more than words could: sorrow, pride, understanding, but she didn't press him. She knew he didn't need comfort. Not now. Naruto turned from Yin's grave, his patterns flickering crimson violet in the dawn light. He whispered, almost to himself, I'll make you proud. Somehow. Then he walked away. The chop of blades filled the night as the hunter helicopter skimmed low over the sea. Naruto sat in the rear cabin, duffel at his feet, cloak bunched at his side. Salt air pushed through the open hatch, stinging his face, but he didn't flinch. Two hunters sat across from him, their uniforms spotless but their eyes nervous. They didn't meet his gaze. Not out of disrespect but because of the title. The Devourer. He could feel the gulf it created between him and everyone else. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. Village ahead. Small fishing town on the coast. Demons raided at dusk. Survivors are cornered. You're their last shot. Naruto stood, slinging the duffel onto his shoulder. The floor shuddered under his boots as the chopper tilted into the wind. We can drop you in the clearing past the tree line, one of the hunters said quickly. His tone was clipped, but there was fear underneath, like he wanted to beg him to wait for backup. Naruto shook his head. No. I don't need the landing. Before they could react, he stepped to the open hatch. The sea churned black beneath him, the coastline rushing closer. He took one last breath of the salt air, then dropped. Shouts followed him, snatched away by the wind. The fall was long enough for the roar of the rotors to fade, long enough for the weight of everything to press down. Roomie's words, the shattered tree, the names he'd lost. The waves clawed up toward him like they meant to swallow him whole. Just before the water could take him, his form blurred, breaking apart like mist. A heartbeat later, he was gone from the sea and standing on the cliffs above the village. Stone cracked beneath his boots. Smoke curled over rooftops in the distance, screams carried thin across the wind. The smell of salt and blood was thick, choking. Naruto adjusted the duffel on his shoulder, his jaw set. His chest still ached from the night before, but there was no time for grief. Not here. Not now. Down below, hunters moved grimly through the ruins, cloaks torn, faces gaunt. A lookout spotted him on the ridge, eyes widening. The cry rang out across the shattered village. He's here. The Devourer has arrived. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, some desperate, some reverent, some too hollow to show anything at all. Naruto squared his shoulders. Forced down the ache. Forced his voice to carry. "Show me the way," he said. "We don't let this village fall." And with that, he strode down into the smoke and fire, into his first mission as the Devourer. The hunters parted almost in disbelief. The Devourer, the first in centuries, was here, walking among them. They saw his face shift into something hard, strppd of all warmth. A soldier's mask. A man carved by war. His steps were crisp, precise, radiating an authority that needed no announcement. His patterns pulsed crimson, faint light etching against the smoke, as if the weight of his vow still burned on his skin. He didn't hesitate. Didn't ask who was in charge. His gaze cut straight to the man with the commander's band. "Status," Naruto barked. The hunter stiffened, his first instinct a flare of indignation. Who dared to speak to him like that? But then he turned, and his breath caught. The eyes that met his weren't ordinary. They were the Devourer's. He snapped upright. 3 hunters injured. 37 civilians dead. Their souls were taken before we could intervene. Naruto's face didn't flicker. No grief. No pity. Just calculation. Where are the demons now? The commander straightened further, voice firm despite the tremor in his throat. Pinned at the southern edge of the village. We've kept them contained, but it's a standstill. Naruto gave a sharp nod. No wasted words. No hesitation. Then, in a blur of light, he vanished. The commander's throat bobbed as sweat beaded down his temple. The others exchanged quick, shaken looks. This wasn't like seeing a fellow hunter. This was what it looked like when true power moved, cold, inevitable, and unstoppable. Naruto appeared on the southern front in a ripple of air, cloak snapping as his boots hit the slick dirt. His eyes swept the battlefield, once hunters locked in desperate clashes, weaker demons clawing at them with feral rage. They weren't the strongest he'd faced, but there were too many, and the hunters were drowning under the tide. To him, though, they were nothing more than roaches. He drew in a single sharp breath, steadying himself for the strain, and then vanished. The first demon never saw him. One heartbeat it was pressing a hunter's blade back toward his chest, the next its head was rolling across the ground, Naruto's blade flashing crimson in the smoke. Another lunged at him, claws stretched wide. Naruto didn't even blink. He leaned aside with the precision of a whisper, dragging his sword in a clean arc across its torso as it passed. The demon dissolved into ash before it hit the ground. Then he was gone again, flickering through the battlefield like a phantom. Every reappearance marked by a body collapsing, a spray of blood, the hiss of a soul dissipating. Hunters turned their heads trying to follow, but the fight was already being rewritten before their eyes. The tide shifted. Demons snarled and faltered, the press of their assault stuttering. Panic rippled through their ranks as the truth set in. This was no ordinary hunter. This was something else. They tried to flee. Naruto let his demon energy uncoil. It rolled out of him in a suffocating wave, crushing the battlefield beneath its weight. The very air thickened, impossible to breathe. Hunters froze mid-swing, their limbs trembling, demons collapsed to their knees, eyes wide with primal fear. And then Naruto roared. The sound wasn't human. It ripped through the night like thunder made flesh, and the battlefield stopped. Every heartbeat, every breath, every cry strangled to silence. For an instant, time itself seemed to shudder. In that frozen moment, Naruto moved. His blade was a crimson blur, cutting through quivering shadows like wheat beneath a scythe. 15 demons fell in the space between breaths, bodies shattering before they could even comprehend the terror holding them still. When the roar faded, the ground was slick with ash. The only sound left was the ragged gasps of hunters who could finally breathe again. Naruto stood at the center of it all, his blade dripping light, his eyes glowing faintly in the smoke. And the demons learned, too late, what it meant to face the Devourer. The lieutenant raised his sword, voice ragged as he bellowed, "Stand your ground. For Gyima." His words never finished. Naruto was there, a blur, a cut, and the demon's head spun into the air before slamming wetly into the mud. The lieutenant's body collapsed, still reaching for courage. The battlefield froze. Every demon, every hunter, felt the shift. It wasn't a man who'd stepped into their war. It wasn't even a warrior. It was folklore breathing, inevitability in the shape of a boy. The Devourer. He's not supposed to be real, one demon thought, claws trembling against its weapon. Just a story to scare recruits. Just a nightmare to keep us loyal. But there he stood. Eyes like burning coals. Blade humming with hunger. Every step he took toward them, the air thickened until it scraped like glass in their lungs. A winged demon screeched, beating upward into the night. Naruto blurred, reappearing midair. His blade split the creature from jaw to groin. Both halves plummeted, steaming. Another lunged from behind, claws scything for his spine. Naruto tilted an inch, the attack brushing air. His sword whispered, and the demon folded at the waist, body spilling apart in silence. "Move," a smaller demon begged itself, knees locked, body shaking. "Run. Run." But its limbs refused. The killing intent pressed down too heavy. Its eyes met his, and in that instant it knew. "I'm already dead." Hunters who had spent their lives fighting tooth and nail just to survive watched in disbelief. The boy moved like a storm given flesh. No wasted motion. No hesitation. No mercy. Demons rushed in packs now, fear driving them forward in madness. Naruto waded in, cloak snapping like a funeral banner. His blade swept once 3 bodies fell. He pivoted, slammed his boot through another chest, then dragged the blade up through its throat. A spin, and another head tumbled free. The air itself bent around him. Wind died. The fires that had consumed homes guttered low, cowed by his presence. Even the night went still, like the world knew death had already chosen this ground. The demons felt it worst. Their voices shrieked the old name. Devourer. Naruto let them scream. His killing intent rolled outward, a suffocating tide. The strongest among them buckled. The weakest dropped to their knees, their bodies betraying them before they could flee. "It's not a fight," another demon realized, horror stretching across its face as it stumbled backward. "It's an execution." He moved through them like a shadow with teeth. A move nailed one to the dirt, its body dissolving before it could beg. A sweep cleaved 2 in half, black ichor spraying across the stones. He stepped forward, cloak brushing the ground, and split another's skull with such finality it never even twitched. No wasted strike. No second chances. Every cut was a death sentence. One massive demon roared, twin axes flashing as it charged. Sparks exploded as steel met steel. For a heartbeat, it looked like a duel. Then Naruto stepped inside, twisted, and both arms spun away in the dirt. Before the scream even rose, his blade drove through its chest, pinning it to the earth. The roar of battle broke. The demons faltered. Their shrieks turned to whimpers, scrambling over each other to escape. But Naruto's voice followed, cold and merciless. There is no escape. The words were not a threat. They were a promise. His patterns blazed crimson, flooding the ruins in bloodlight. Demons froze under the weight of his will, bodies quivering, unable to take another step. Naruto's blade carved through them like grain before a scythe. 15 fell in less than a minute, throats slit, chests caved, bodies severed. The earth drank deep. When silence returned, only corpses remained. Hunters trembled where they stood. Some wept. Some bowed. None dared speak. And at the center of the carnage, Naruto stood alone, his blade dripping, his cloak swaying in the still air, eyes burning with the certainty of a promise. Not a warrior. Not a savior. The Devourer. The Reaper from folklore. The blade of inevitability. Anywhere else? Naruto asked, voice flat as stone. The hunters froze, eyes darting between one another, throats locked. His killing intent still lingered in the air, a phantom blade pressed against every neck. For a breath too long, no one spoke. Then, as if remembering how to breathe, one hunter croaked, "And no, sir." The north side was the last. Instantly, Naruto's face slackened. The suffocating pressure dissolved, and the hunters gasped like drowning men breaking the surface. Their shoulders sagged, their knees weak. Naruto gave a single nod. His gaze drifted past them, settling on the ruined homes, the shredded bodies half hidden under sheets. The villagers who hadn't been fast enough. The ones the demons had already feasted on. His voice dropped low, strppd of all the fire he'd shown in battle. Bury the dead. Do not let them rot up here. The order was simple, but it carried the weight of command. No room for debate. Just truth. Hunters straightened, clutching their weapons tighter. Yes, sir. Naruto turned then, his steps measured, deliberate. That familiar gait, the stride of a man who knew command wasn't given, it was taken. Not swagger. Not arrogance. Just absolute confidence and the power to back it. He walked like a god among men, crimson patterns still burning faintly against his skin. Hunters watched in silence, awe mingling with relief, knowing they had glimpsed what the old folklore had always warned of. Not just a savior. Not just a soldier. The Devourer. And with every step, he reminded them, fear had no place when inevitability was on their side. Naruto approached the commander, hood drawn low, his steps quiet but heavy with authority. The battlefield still smelled of blood and ash, the echoes of his slaughter hanging thick in the air. "I'll be taking my leave," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm after the storm he had unleashed. "Have a copter come get me at first light." The commander swallowed hard, his throat working as he fought to steady himself. His hands still trembled from the pressure that had nearly crushed him minutes before. He managed a stiff nod. "Yes, sir." His eyes flicked past Naruto to the broken demons scattered like discarded husks, disappearing into smoke, to the smoldering ruins of what had been their village. Hours ago, he had been staring into certain defeat. 37 dead civilians, hunters outnumbered and exhausted, morale shattered. They hadn't just been losing, they had been drowning. And then this man came. Not a man. Something more. A force. In less than an hour, the tide had turned. In less than an hour, the Devourer had erased the threat with ruthless, surgical precision. As Naruto's cloak trailed behind him, crimson patterns glowing faintly through the dark, the commander could only think one truth. The war was theirs to lose. But with this man walking among them, demons didn't stand a chance. The thrum of the rotors was steady, almost soothing, but Naruto couldn't feel it. He sat hunched in the rear of the helicopter, cloak pooled at his feet, sword balanced loosely against his knee. His hood shadowed his face, hiding the tremor in his jaw, the twitch of his lips that weren't strong enough to hold a smile. The hunters across from him didn't dare speak. Their eyes flicked to him now and then, wide with awe and terror. To them, he was untouchable. The Reaper. The Devourer. The one who could end a war in less than an hour. But Naruto's thoughts were miles away. His hand dragged down his face, leaving streaks of grime on his skin. Why can't I be normal? The words rasped out before he could stop them, snatched away by the roar of the engine. He clenched his fists, staring down at the faint glow of his patterns through the torn fabric of his sleeves. Crimson, the color of rage, of vows broken, of the soul-deep wound Roomie had left with just a few words. Without her, he wasn't a man. He wasn't even Naruto Uzumaki anymore. He was just a weapon. A soldier. A reaper with no soul. His breath hitched, but he forced it down, burying the crack before the hunters could see. They couldn't know. No one could know. To the world, he was the Devourer, a god made flesh, a monster who walked among them with the power to silence demons. But inside, he was empty. A hollow vessel swinging a blade because it was all he knew how to do. And Roomie had been the only thing tethering him to something more. To life. To warmth. To the idea that he wasn't just a shadow wearing human skin. But if even she saw him as a coward, as someone who abandoned the people he loved, what else was left? He pressed his forehead against the hilt of his blade, teeth gritted hard enough to draw blood from his lip. His voice cracked into the hum of the rotors, soft enough no one else could hear. Without you, North Star, I'm already gone. The helicopter cut through the night, carrying the Devourer back to Seoul. But in the corner, hidden in shadow, sat a man unraveling a reaper who feared he'd already lost the last piece of his soul. The makeshift command tent still smelled like smoke and salt when the field commander found a working sat phone. He wiped ash off the screen with the back of his hand, forced his voice steady, and dialed the council line. Elder line. Identify. Commander Han, Shikoku Detachment. He swallowed. Status report, engagement concluded. A heartbeat of silence. Then Tokima's voice, calm, iron. Proceed. Han stared through the tent flap at the blackened village, at his hunters moving like ghosts among the ruined beams. We were losing, he said, plain. South and North fronts active. 37 civilian dead before arrival. 3 hunters down, not fatal. He exhaled. Devourer deployed at 2112. Murmurs knifed through the line, faint, restrained. Tokima again, result. Han's knuckles whitened around the handset. South front stabilized in seconds. He removed a stalemate by decapitating the lead demon mid-beat. Then teleport strikes, continuous. No wasted motion. He hesitated, searching for a word that didn't feel like myth. North front collapsed. Lieutenant class attempted rally. Failed. The Devourer broke their line with a pressure wave. Killer intent. Everything froze. He forced himself to say it. He culled fleeing targets. No survivors among the raiders. Silence. Then a different elder, voice thin, collateral. None from him. Han's eyes found a tarp-covered row. Only what we failed to prevent before he arrived. A soft click, someone else joining. Seline's voice, low. Condition of the Devourer. Han pictured the hood, the sword balanced on a knee, the way the air felt colder around the boy who wasn't a boy. Operational. He lowered his voice. Sir, ma'am, he ordered burials. Spoke softly. But his face, Han caught himself. Permission to speak freely. Granted, Tokima said. He looked like war, Han said. Like there was nothing left in him but the blade. No one answered for a long beat. Finally, Tokima, extraction. He refused a landing. Jumped into coastal airspace, reappeared on the cliff. After action, requested helicopter at first light for return to Seoul. Will comply. Papers rustled on the far end. An elder cleared her throat. Politically? Word will spread, Han said. Hunters saw him. Villagers, too. They'll say the Devourer walks again. Some will pray. Some will hide. A quiet, weary breath from Seline. I'll meet him on arrival. Tokiyima's staff struck stone somewhere far away. Han could hear it through the line, that sure, final cadence. Commander Han. Your detachment will see to the dead. Name them, mark them, and burn what must be burned. Leave no rot for demons to feed. Yes, Elder. As for the Devourer, Tokiyama continued, voice softer by a fraction, do not question his methods in the field. Do not celebrate them in the streets. He is a spear we point, not a banner we wave. Han nodded to no one. Understood. Seline spoke once more, gentler. If he says nothing on the flight, say less. Make sure he drinks water. That's all. A faint, humorless smile tugged at Han's mouth. Aye. Report complete, Tokiyama said. Send your written within the hour. And, Commander? Sir. Thank him, Tokiyama said. Even if he cannot hear it. The line clicked dead. In the tense hush, Han stared at the handset a moment longer, then stepped outside into the cooling night. Down the slope, his people had begun the first careful burials, shovels biting earth in steady rhythm. Above them, the cliff where he'd first seen the hooded figure was empty now. But the feeling lingered like a storm had passed and left the air thinner. Han slipped the phone into his pocket and started toward the rows of the dead. Thank you, he said under his breath, to the dark, to the sea, to the boy who'd felt like a god. Even if you can't hear it. The echo of Commander Han's report lingered in the chamber long after the line went dead. The elders sat around the great obsidian table, their patterns casting faint light in the gloom. Silence held, thick as incense smoke, until one voice finally broke it. He culled the entire north front. Elder Shinji's tone carried both awe and unease. Lieutenant class among them? Alone. Without hesitation, Tokiyama confirmed, his staff resting across his lap. The commander's account was precise. No survivors among the raiders. A ripple moved through the circle. So the stories were true, Elder May whispered, her lined hands clasped tight. The Devourer returned in the flesh. A promise of salvation. Her eyes shone wetly, reverent. Or a warning, Elder Quan muttered, his voice like gravel. His gaze was sharp, heavy on the others. Did you hear Han's words? He looked like war itself. This is not salvation. It is a blade sharpened too fine. Sooner or later, it cuts the hand that holds it. Spare us your doomsaying, snapped Elder Hyan, though even her defiance wavered. Would you rather Shikoku burned? Would you rather 37 dead become 300? He delivered us a victory that your hunters could not. Victory, Quan spat, but at what cost to his soul? He slaughtered without mercy, froze the battlefield with nothing but intent. That is not human. That is the point, May answered softly. He is not only human. He is what we need. Voices rose, layered, some speaking of honor, others of fear. Yet beneath the discord was a current none denied, respect. Not one elder questioned the power that had been displayed, nor the necessity of it. At the far end of the table, Seline finally lifted her head. Her voice was calm, steady, but carried through the noise like a bell. He saved them. He saved who could be saved. That is what matters. The rest, she paused, her eyes heavy, the rest he will bear, as he always has. The chamber fell silent again. Even Quan lowered his gaze, though the tension never left his jaw. Tokiyama struck the staff once against the stone floor. The sound echoed sharp and final. Enough. Whether savior or reaper, whether this brings us comfort or unease, one truth remains. The Devourer walks again. And we will respect him as such. No one argued. Some leaned back, relief flickering in their eyes. Some frowned, worry burrowing deeper into their faces. Some sat still as stone, unreadable. But all bowed their heads not in worship, but in recognition. The council chamber emptied slowly, voices fading into the long stone corridors. Some elders left shaken, whispering about the boy they had tried to break. Others left with grim respect, heads bowed, muttering that perhaps fate had chosen rightly after all. But all of them agreed on one thing. The Devourer had returned. Aayaka lingered in the shadows near the carved archway, her eyes lowered, her hands folded neatly before her. A silent scribe, a translator when needed. Invisible. No one noticed she hadn't moved when the last lantern guttered out. Her gaze lifted at last, following the path of the departing elders. Tokiyima's words rang fresh in her head, the Devourer walks again. And we will respect him as such. Her lips curled, not in awe but in something sly, twisted. Aayaka turned from the hall and walked swiftly through the winding sanctum, her steps light, precise, unhurried. At last she reached the outer cloisters, where night pressed against the lattice windows, cool and sharp. Only then did she slip her hand into her sleeve. The charm she withdrew was small, unremarkable to the untrained eye. But its surface pulsed faintly, veins of red light crawling across the blackened stone, humming with power that did not belong to the hunters. Her eyes hardened. Her whisper carried no hesitation. I must report this to Janu. The charm flared, a heartbeat of scarlet against the dark, before dying back into silence. Aayaka tucked it away again, her face smoothing into its usual calm mask. By dawn, she would sit at the elder's side again, interpreting, bowing, unseen. But in truth, she had already chosen her MSTR. And far from Shikoku, somewhere in the dark, Janu would soon know the Devourer had stepped onto the stage. Omake, wait, we're dating. Naruto leaned against the counter, slurping ramen straight from the pot. Roomie walked in, hair damp from her shower, wearing his shirt like it was the most natural thing in the world. She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, snagged one of his dumplings, and plopped onto the couch. Hey, babe, don't forget we have rehearsal tonight, she said casually, already flipping through her phone. Naruto blinked, chopsticks frozen halfway to his mouth. Babe? He watched her stretch across the couch, her long hair spilling over the cushions, patterns glowing faintly violet as she hummed under her breath. She looked perfectly at home, like this was her place as much as his. But wait. She lived upstairs. Didn't she? Or was it downstairs now? She'd been around so often he wasn't sure anymore. Naruto frowned, scratching his head. Hey, Roomie. She said around the dumpling. Are we dating? The dumpling almost fell out of her mouth. She sat up so fast her phone went flying. What? Naruto raised his hands defensively, ramen still dangling from his chopsticks. I'm just saying, you move me downstairs, you steal my food, we kiss all the time, but like nobody said anything, right? So technically. Roomie's voice shot up an octave. Naruto, you idiot, we've been together for months. Naruto blinked. Really? Zoey popped her head in through the open door with Mira right behind her. Oh my god, he didn't know. This is better than TV. Mira facepalmed. He slays demons like they're flies, but basic relationships? Impossible. Roomie buried her face in her hands. Naruto, I swear, sometimes I wonder if you even know what planet you're on. Naruto slurped his ramen, unbothered. So that's a yes. Roomie launched the nearest pillow at him. The Sage of Six Paths sighed, his ancient eyes heavy with sorrow as he gazed upon his son's suffering. Ashura reborn repeatedly, each life carrying more pain than the last. But this one was different. Naruto. The boy who had carried laughter into a world of scorn, who had turned hatred into bonds, who had fought his own brother and shattered himself to release Indra's soul. The boy who had already lost everything, his world, his purpose, his light. "My son," the sage whispered, voice cracking as tears welled in his eyes. "My son. How much darkness must you endure before your light goes out completely?" His staff trembled in his grip, the ancient wood resonating with the ache in his chest. For countless cycles, he had watched, believing that fate must be allowed to unfold, that his sons must walk their own paths. He had been the silent witness, the quiet hand that never interfered. But the image of Naruto's smile, that broken, hollow grin meant to hide the wound tearing through his soul, cut him deeper than any blade. It was the same smile he had seen on Ashura in lifetimes past, the same mask of pain disguised as hope. "No more," he whispered, his voice low but edged with thunder. "I have asked too much of you. Too many battles. Too many burdens. Too many lifetimes of bleeding for a world that does not deserve your kindness." Golden light began to seep from his eyes, burning brighter with every word. The tears still fell strkng down his weathered face, but his resolve had hardened like stone. "I will not sit idle while your soul breaks. Not this time. You are my child. My son. And I will fix this. I promise." He slammed the staff against the unseen ground, and the void shuddered. Ripples of power cascaded outward, bending reality itself, a storm of creation and destruction swelling around him. His robes lifted in a wind that did not exist, his form already unraveling into threads of light. The sage bowed his head one final time, his voice dropping to a prayer. "I will not let." And with that vow, the sage of six paths vanished, leaving only the echo of his words, a father's desperate promise etched into the world's bones. The sage of six paths reappeared high above Seoul, his form a wisp of gold against the moonlight. His gaze fell on the penthouse below, where Roomie huddled with Mira and Zoey, her body trembling as grief poured out of her. The girls clung to each other, their tears staining the night. "I will save this Ashura," the sage whispered, his voice carrying on a wind only the stars could hear. "I promise." He raised a hand, ancient energy curling like a river between his fingers. With a solemn breath, he extended it downward. A thread of his power slipped into Roomie, so subtle the others could not sense it, a spark of divinity carried into her heart. Her head jerked slightly, her breath catching. The room blurred, her tears dissolving, and suddenly she was standing somewhere else. The sky was endless, painted with swirling light. The air shimmered like a dream made flesh. And before her stood a figure unlike any she had ever seen. His robes were ancient yet radiant, his staff gleaming with galaxies in its grain. His eyes glowed with sorrow and strength, and though he carried the weight of eternity, his presence felt warm. Fatherly. Roomie staggered back a step, awe coursing through her veins. Her patterns flickered instinctively, violet light blooming across her arms and collarbone. Who are you?" she breathed, her voice trembling. The sage's gaze softened as it settled on her, as though he had been waiting for this moment. "I am Hagoromo," he said, voice deep and calm, though it carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. "The one your beloved once called the Sage of Six Paths." Recognition sparked in her chest, not of the man himself, but of the sheer power he radiated. She felt it instantly, instinctively. This was no demon, no hunter, no priest. This was something beyond. Her knees weakened. Why are you here? Why show yourself to me?" The sage's gaze pierced her, kind yet unyielding. His voice rumbled through the dream realm, carrying a weight Roomie had never felt before. "Because my son is hurting, and I can't sit by." Roomie's lips parted, her heart skipping. "Naruto," she whispered. Is he okay?" His gaze darkened, and when he spoke again it was cold, strppd of comfort. "Do you even know how much he has suffered?" Shame prickled down her spine. "He's told me some of it." "Some," Hagoromo echoed, the word cutting. "But not all." It is not Ashura's way to let others carry his burden. He has never been that way. He will bleed and smile at the same time if it means others don't hurt. That is his curse. That is his gift. He is special. You will never find another soul like him. Roomie blinked at the name. Ashura? Why do you call him that? And his parents, I thought they died. The sage didn't answer her questions. Instead, his eyes hardened, sorrow sharpening into steel. I watched my baby boy smile even as villagers scorned him, blaming him for sins that were never his. I saw him extend his hand to the beast sealed within him, treat the tailed one as a brother, not a curse. I saw him bleed himself dry for a world that spat in his face. His voice trembled, then broke into a thunderclap of cold fury. And you dare to accuse him of abandoning it? Roomie staggered, her breath caught in her throat. The echo of her own words, the fight, her rash accusation slammed back into her chest like a blade. The sage stepped closer, his towering figure haloed in cosmic light. You speak of betrayal, yet you do not understand what betrayal has already cost him. You see the smile but you do not feel the weight behind it. He has carried death, grief, loneliness across lifetimes. And still, he smiled. His voice cracked for the first time, quiet and desperate, the voice of a father. He was my son. And now I fear his light is flickering. The silence between them was heavy, pressing, unescapable. Roomie's hands shook at her sides, her patterns dimming to a faint glow. I was protecting him. Hagoromo's gaze softened at last, though it carried sorrow deeper than oceans. Then protect him with truth, child. Not with secrets. Not with silence. For if he believes he is alone in this, his staff glowed faintly, galaxies swirling in its grain. Then the darkness will win. Roomie's shoulders shook, her violet patterns flickering faintly as she bowed in the dream realm, tears strkng her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice cracking. I never meant to hurt him. I was angry, I was wrong. Please, I love him. The sage's staff struck the ground with a sharp crack, light splitting across the dreamscape like lightning. His voice thundered, not cruel but resolute. Enough. He has carried the world on his back since the moment he drew breath. He smiled while they scorned him. He fought while they cursed his name. He gave, and gave, and gave until there was nothing left for himself. And still, he smiled. Roomie sobbed harder, hands digging into the glowing floor. I know. You know nothing, Hagoromo cut in, his eyes burning, tears gleaming even as his tone hardened like steel. Do you understand what I have watched? Lifetime after lifetime, my son is reborn only to bleed for others. But this life, this one has been the cruelest. He lost his family. He lost his world. He lost his brother, forced to end Indra's soul with his own hands. And yet he smiled when he found you. For the first time, I thought perhaps his suffering had an end. His staff lowered, but his gaze did not soften. And now you, the one he placed his heart into, accuse him of cowardice. Of abandonment. His voice cracked with sorrow and rage. I will not forgive it. Roomie's breath hitched, her words tumbling out desperately. Please, I can fix this. I'll show him, I'll prove it to him. Just don't take him away from me. The sage's voice dropped, deep as a grave. Actions speak louder than words, child. I will not watch him shatter into a husk because of one more betrayal. Better to take him myself to the pure lands, where love is not conditional, where souls do not cut each other open, than let him rot in despair here. Her eyes widened, terror clawing up her throat. No, you can't, please, don't take him. The sage's voice thundered with ruthless protection. Then prove you deserve him. Prove you can stand at his side and never falter. Because if he breaks, if his light goes out, his staff struck again, the sound like the world itself cracking, then you will not only lose him, you will lose everything. The dream fractured, light swallowing her cries, and the sage vanished. Aayaka knelt in the shadowed chamber, head bowed low, the cold light of the torches leaking faintly through the tall windows. In her hand was the sealed parchment, still heavy with the scent of ash. She broke it open with delicate fingers, her eyes flicking across the words. Her breath caught, but her face did not change. Orders. Eliminate Tokiyama before the hunters rally. Ensure Uzumaki Naruto is redirected to Tokyo. There, he will be killed. Once and for all. Janu's mark scrawled the bottom, sharp and deliberate. Ayaka's lips curled into something between a smirk and a grimace. The Devourer himself, the boy the hunters whispered about like a weapon come to life, and Janu spoke of killing him like snapping a twig. She folded the paper, slipping it into her sleeve, her patterns flickering faint amber in the dark. She whispered to herself, her voice sharp enough to cut. So that's the plan. Lure the hunter god to Tokyo. Put him down where the world can see. For the first time in centuries, she felt the sting of hesitation. Naruto was not like the others. She had seen him fight, heard the way the villagers already spoke his name. Reaper. Savior. Devourer. Killing him wouldn't just end a man, it could shatter the balance itself. But Janu had given his command. And she served Ji-ma through him. Aayaka rose, sliding the folded parchment into her cloak. Her boots clicked against the floor. Tokiyama first, she murmured. Then we send the Devourer into the lion's den. And when he falls. She smiled, thin and merciless. Soul will burn in the aftermath. Tokiyama's quarters were quiet, the faint scent of incense curling through the air. Scrolls lined the shelves, ink still drying on the report scattered across his desk. He was a man used to the weight of command. Yet tonight, he allowed himself the small comfort of routine. Aayaka was already there, kneeling by the low table, kettle steaming gently beside her. It wasn't unusual every week, they shared tea. A tradition he'd come to rely on, a sliver of humanity among endless BLD and orders. Ah, Aayaka, Tokiyama said with a weary smile as he entered, loosening the strap of his sword. You're early tonight. I could use the company. But the smile faltered when he saw her face. Tears traced down her cheeks, her hands trembling as she poured the tea. Aayaka, he asked, voice softening. What's wrong? She shook her head, biting her lip, the picture of a child too burdened to speak. When she finally lifted her gaze to his, her eyes swam with sorrow. I have to confess something. Tokiyama's chest tightened. He crossed the room without hesitation, lowering himself to her side. His hand settled on her shoulder, firm but kind. Whatever it is, you can tell me, my child. Nothing will change what you mean to us. She swallowed hard. Then, through a whisper cracked with grief, she said, I'm sorry. Before his confusion could deepen, the dagger flashed. Steel buried itself in his chest, right through the heart. His breath hitched, the strength leaving him instantly as his eyes went wide in disbelief. He staggered, clutching at her arm as though to steady himself. Aayaka, his voice was a strangled rasp, half question, half pain. Her tears fell harder, but her smile bit into him like poison. You killed my brother. You called him a demon. You cut him down. And then you took me, trained me as one of you. Groomed me into your blade. His knees hit the floor, BLD pooling beneath his robes. Her voice rose, trembling with rage and triumph all at once. It wasn't until Ji-ma told me the truth that I understood. That I accepted. 400 years I've served him, 400 years I've waited for this moment. She yanked the blade free, crimson spraying across the tatami. Tokiyama choked, his hand pressing feebly to the wound as he slumped against the wall. For Janu. For mother. For the sister you turned into your weapon, she hissed, her tears blurring her vision as his life bled out before her. This is the end you earned. And with that, she let him fall. Tokiyama's eyes clouded, his breath fading into nothing. The old hunter who had trusted her, who had seen her as family, lay still at her knees. Aayaka wiped her blade, her expression breaking into a cold, resolute calm. The sorrow vanished. The mask was gone. "Your war is over," she whispered, standing above him. "Ours is just beginning." Aayaka sat at Tokima's desk, the ink still wet on her blade, his blood cooling on the tatami. Her tears were gone now. Her hands no longer trembled. Instead, they moved with careful precision across parchment. She dipped the brush in ink, forging his handwriting with the same skill she once used to copy mission logs as a dutiful student. Slide by slide, she drafted the orders. Assignment, Tokyo Prefecture. Status, Black Zone. Objective, investigate disturbance. Possible high-class demon presence. Commander assigned, Uzumaki Naruto, Devourer. Direct from Tokima. Urgent. She blew lightly across the page, drying the ink. Then she pressed the official seal into the parchment, steady hands never faltering. The deception was flawless. Rising smoothly, she folded the document into an envelope, sealing it with wax. When she stepped into the corridor, her expression was calm, almost mournful. The guards stationed nearby bowed their heads, none of them suspecting the commander was already cooling in his chamber. She crossed paths with a courier and beckoned him closer. "This just came from Lord Tokima," she said softly, holding out the envelope. Her voice was calm, her eyes glistening as though with grief. "He said it was urgent. See that it's delivered immediately." The courier bowed sharply, taking the orders with both hands. "At once, Lady Aayaka." She inclined her head, offering a faint, brittle smile. "Good. Don't fail him." He hurried off down the hall. Aayaka lingered for only a moment, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade. Then she turned, her sandals whispering against the floor, and walked out of the compound without looking back. The night swallowed her. And in its shadows, her smile bloomed sharp, triumphant, terrible. Naruto was going to Tokyo. And Tokyo would be his grave. The helicopter blade slowed as it touched down on the Hunter Outpost's landing pad, the sea wind whipping Naruto's cloak around his shoulders. His boots hit the metal with a dull thud, his duffel slung across his back. He was still carrying the weight of Shikoku's screams in his chest, his patterns faintly glowing crimson as if the blood hadn't washed off yet. He didn't even have time to breathe. A courier sprinted toward him, robes fluttering, sweat beading across his brow. He skidded to a stop, thrusting out a sealed envelope marked with Tokima's crest. "Direct orders," the courier panted. "From Commander Tokima. Immediate dispatch." Naruto exhaled, slow and tired. His hand lingered on the envelope longer than it should have, thumb brushing the wax seal. A part of him wanted to laugh, no rest, not even for a night. The Devourer had no right to peace. "Fine," he muttered, breaking the seal and scanning the words. His jaw tightened at the destination. Tokyo. The heart of the storm. He folded the letter neatly, slipping it inside his cloak. He didn't ask questions, didn't linger on the shadows curling around his gut. He had his orders. And orders meant movement. Naruto adjusted the strap of his duffel, gaze fixed on the horizon where the city lights burned faintly in the distance. "Tokyo, then," he said under his breath, voice clipped and cold. Unaware. Unaware that every step forward wasn't leading him to battle but into the jaws of a death carefully laid for him. Janu's smirk stretched cruel as the summoning circle bled light beneath him, pulsing red like a heartbeat about to burst. One by one, demons crawled through, claws screeching against stone, jaws snapping as they filled the warehouse with a sick stench of sulfur and rot. Some loomed like shadows with wings, others hunched and drooling, their eyes wild with hunger. But Janu barely looked at them. His eyes burned with something else. Uzumaki Naruto. Even thinking the name made his teeth grind. That BSTRD who walked around with his golden boy grin, his perfect Korean on his lips, violet eyes flashing like he had been blessed by the Lord above. Everything through the strength of a demon's taint, a sword and a future. While Janu no, while he had been discarded, spat on, forced to crawl back to Gima with BLD on his hands and chains around his throat. I hate people like him, Janu snarled, pacing the edge of the circle as another demon dragged itself free. He's got it all. The power, the respect, the girl. He can stumble through life and still land on his feet. And everyone, his lip curled, sharp and bitter, everyone looks at him like he's the savior of their world. His nails scraped hard down his arm, drawing BLD that hissed when it hit the glowing sigils. He didn't even flinch. He doesn't deserve it. Not him. Not someone born lucky. Not someone who didn't pay the price. He reached into his coat, producing the slim violet phone case, the little star charm dangling faintly in the light. Roomie's phone. He twirled it once in his fingers, smirking down at the glowing message he had typed himself. Can you meet me in Tokyo? We're doing a concert there. Midnight. She'll never know it was me, he hissed, thumbing the screen like a blade. And Uzumaki will never question it. Not when her name's on it. Not when Ayaka's forged orders push him into the same city. He slipped the phone back into his coat, patting it like a prize. He'll walk right into my jaws. Behind him, Giant stiffened. His hair veiled his face, but the tension in his hands betrayed him. Janu caught it and laughed, sharp and cruel. You don't get it, brother. This isn't just a victory. This is fate. Gima himself will reward us when Uzumaki falls. For centuries, I've been nothing but a pawn, a servant playing at shadows. But this? This is how I prove myself. This is how I ascend. His grin widened, manic. Once Uzumaki's broken, once the Devourer's corpse lies at my feet, Gima won't just see me as his servant. He'll see me as his heir. And then we will be a family again, you, me, and Aayaka. The warehouse trembled as the circle widened, the outline of something enormous pressing against the fabric of reality. Tentacles brushed the barrier, slick and endless, and the demons already born shrieked in reverence. Cthulhu was coming. Janu spread his arms wide, head tilted back, laughter spilling into the rafters. Soon, Uzumaki will bleed. Soon, his legend will crumble. And me? His voice shook with hunger. I'll be the one they whisper about in fear. I'll be the one remembered. The laugh that followed was jagged and mad, echoing with the promise of betrayal. Giant turned his face away, his breath shallow. He knew what it was to be fooled, to be chained by Gima's lies. And now, Uzumaki was about to walk straight into the same pit. The only question left was whether Giant would let him. The helicopter blade still echoed in his ears when Naruto stepped onto solid ground. Smoke curled over Shikoku's coastline, but before he could even check in with the local hunters, a courier rushed him, breathless and clutching a sealed packet. Urgent orders from the elders, the man stammered, thrusting it into his hands. Naruto broke the seal with a thumb, eyes narrowing as he scanned the parchment. His mission had changed. Tokyo. High-class demon activity, immediate reinforcement required. His stomach twisted. Tokyo. Now. Before he could process it, his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his cloak. Roomie's name lit the screen. Can you meet me in Tokyo? We're doing a concert there. Midnight. For a heartbeat, he just stared. His BLD ran cold. No, his voice rasped, barely audible. His grip tightened around the phone, his patterns flaring faintly. No, Roomie, not there. Not now. His fingers flew over the screen, typing with frantic speed. Don't come to Tokyo. Demons are swarming it. I'll handle it, just stay away. Please. I'll find you after. His thumb hovered over send, trembling. But another buzz hit. Another message chimed, almost mocking him with her name. Midnight. I'll be waiting. Naruto's chest clenched so hard he nearly doubled over. He shoved the phone into his cloak, forcing his breath steady, forcing his face cold. There was no time to break, not now. Tokyo, he muttered, the word burning on his tongue. His jaw locked. I have to get there before her. He turned to the waiting hunters, eyes like sharpened steel. Get me a copter. Now. If you delay even a second, every soul in that city is on your head. The hunters scrambled. Naruto stood still, cloak snapping in the salt wind, his face pale but unflinching. Inside, though, his heart hammered with a single desperate vow. Don't be there, Roomie. Don't make me fight for you on that battlefield. But he knew, deep down, she would be. Naruto stared at the phone, his chest clenching. Tokyo. Midnight. I'll be waiting. Roomie. His eyes darted between the message and the mission orders in his other hand. Shikoku had been hell enough, but Tokyo? A black zone crawling with high-class demons and she was walking right into it, blind. His breath hitched. No. She doesn't know. She can't know. The paper trembled in his grip as he crushed it into his cloak. I have to warn her, he muttered, voice breaking. I have to before it's too late. The air around him grew taut, pulsing with the faint glow of his crimson patterns. He could already see a demon circling her, Roomie alone in that neon city, her violet light swallowed by darkness. Not her, he rasped, his hand shaking as he shoved the phone into his pocket. Hunters at the outpost looked up as he stormed toward the waiting helicopter, their whispers trailing behind. The Devourer. He looks possessed. Naruto leapt into the cabin, his voice sharp as steel. Tokyo. Get me there. Now. The pilot jolted, but the engines roared to life. As the helicopter rose, the city lights stretched across the horizon like a battlefield waiting to be claimed. Naruto's fists curled tight on his knees, his jaw locked. Whatever waited in Tokyo, demons, armies, death itself, it didn't matter. He wouldn't let Roomie die. He couldn't. She was his reason for every step forward, his North Star. And if the city turned out to be a trap, then he would burn it all down, stone by stone, until she was safe in his arms again. The helicopter's thrum faded into the night as Naruto dropped, cloak snapping like a banner in the wind. Tokyo sprawled beneath him, neon towers, silver rivers of light. But when his boots slammed onto the stadium stage, all that brightness vanished. Dark. Silent. Wrong. The seat stretched out empty, shadows pooled too thick, and the air smelled of sulfur and ash. Roomie. His voice cracked the silence, echoing through the hollow shell of the arena. Roomie. No answer. Then the shadows stirred. Dozens, no, hundreds of them, shapes peeling from the dark. Claws glinting, fangs flashing, eyes lit with hunger. These weren't fodder. These were killers, demons whose names were whispered in hunter records. A pack of monsters strong enough to level cities. Naruto's pulse hammered. His breath came in ragged pulls. She's supposed to be here. If they touched her. Something inside him snapped. The soul blade hissed into existence in his hand, its glow warped by the storm ripping through him. His patterns ignited, not just glowing but burning violet, consumed by blood red flames that raced across his arms, his chest, his face. His eyes slit, burning crimson, his canines lengthening until his snarl was more beast than man. The demons froze mid-step. The stench of their fear filled the air. Naruto didn't care. I won't let you take her. His roar shook the rafters, raw fury tearing from his throat. The stadium itself seemed to shudder with the force of it. And then his power detonated. Demon energy erupted in a tidal wave, crashing outward from his body. The ground splintered beneath him, spotlights burst in showers of sparks, and every demon on the stage flinched, their movements stuttering under the weight of his killing intent. Naruto's blade cut the air once, leaving a searing crimson arc that hissed as it faded. His lips peeled back in a snarl, voice vibrating with something inhuman. "You want me? Come and try." The first demon lunged. Naruto met it head-on, sword flashing, fire roaring, every strike fueled not by strategy but by one promise, burning louder than fear, louder than reason. "She will not die. Not while I still breathe." The air in the arena was too still, too quiet. Naruto's roar ripped it apart. Demon energy burst from him in a tidal wave of fire and shadow, his patterns no longer glowing but blazing, the violet overtaken by molten crimson. It poured off him like a storm, heat distorting the air, cracking the ground at his feet. The horde of demons hesitated, the front rank stumbling back under the sheer pressure. These were veterans of slaughter, creatures who had tasted hunters' blood, but none of them had ever felt this before. This wasn't killing intent. This was annihilation made flesh. Naruto didn't wait. He moved. One instant he was crouched on the cracked stage, the next he was in the middle of them, his blade shrieking through the dark. A demon's head spun skyward, severed clean. Before the body hit the ground, Naruto was already gone, reappearing behind another, his blade raking across its spine in a spray of black blood. Another lunged too slow. Naruto caught its jaw in one hand, crushed it with a sickening crack, and used the corpse as a shield against the claws of its kin. With a snarl, he hurled it into the crowd, bodies scattering like broken puppets. The stadium erupted into chaos. Screeches filled the air, talons slashed, bodies lunged, but Naruto was everywhere. A claw raked his shoulder. He didn't flinch. He spun with it, dragging his blade upward in a brutal arc, splitting the demon open from hip to skull. Another tried to flank him. He whipped his heel around in a spinning kick, the sheer force shattering its ribcage and sending it tumbling into the stands. The air filled with blood and ash. "Come on!" Naruto bellowed, voice cracking the air like thunder. His eyes blazed red, fangs flashing as he cut through another trio, their bodies evaporating into black mist before their screams even ended. More surged forward, and the frenzy grew. He carved in wide arcs, the blade an extension of his fury. Left, right, move, slash, each strike found flesh, each strike ended a life. He didn't dodge so much as lean, moving with reckless precision, letting claws graze him just enough to keep momentum before punishing with lethal counters. His patterns flared brighter, fire licking across his arms as if his very body was burning alive. He let it consume him. A demon leapt high, jaws wide. Naruto hurled his blade like a spear, the crimson edge flashing through the dark. It impaled the creature mid-air, pinning it to the far wall in a spray of fire and ichor. Naruto's hands didn't pause. He caught another demon by the throat, squeezed until its windpipe caved, then ripped his blade free with a flick of energy, recalling it back into his grip as though the distance had never existed. The horde surged again, 100 strong. Naruto answered with nothing but violence. They came smarter the second wave. No more mindless rush. The horde split with a hiss, lanes opening and closing like valves. Tall shapes stepped through elites. Bone masks like helms. Carapace armor etched with sigils. Handlers with braided whips that crackled with black lightning. They moved in squads, triangles that collapsed inward, trying to pin him, trying to choke his movement. "Pin the spear," a commander snarled from the tiered seats. "Break the point. Drown the man." Naruto's answer was a blur and a cut. He flashed between two spearbearers, body low, blade high. Steel hit cartilage, both skulls split as one. He slid on one knee through the spray, planted, and heaved his sword in a full moon. 3 torsos parted at the waist, upper halves slapping the turf with wet thumps before dissolving to soot. The squads adapted. Nets of chain and thorn arced overhead, cast by sling demons perched in the lighting rigs. They crashed down in a lattice of steel and barbs, hissing as they drank at his energy. Naruto didn't slow. He stepped into the first net and let it fall. The barbs bit deep, drinking, tightening. He breathed once, then ripped his arms outward. Muscle bunched, crimson fire jetted along his patterns, the net screamed like a living thing and burst. He was already moving through the ruin, hurling a handful of molten links into the face of the next demon. A handler cracked a WHP, black lightning wrapped his ankle and yanked. Naruto turned with the pull, let it sling him into the air. At the apex of his arc he vanished, reappeared on the balcony rail above the handler, already in motion. He dropped like a hammer, blade first, staking the handler to the concrete. The shock cracked seats in a radius. He tore the sword free and pivoted in the same beat, cutting a charging brute across both knees. It face-planted, skidding. Naruto's heel came down on the back of its neck, crunch. Form rings. Rings, another elite shrieked. He and a dozen more stamped sigils into the turf, black circles blossomed, crawling with runes. A silence fell inside them, a null field that killed the air itself. Naruto ran straight through one. The fire along his arms guttered, the air around him went thin, dead. A cleaver like a guillotine whistled for his neck. He ducked under it, steel ringing his skull as it passed. His answer wasn't energy. It was bone and training. He stepped inside the wielder's reach on a half-beat, shoulder-checking hard enough to stagger the demon, then drove his blade up under its jaw until the point rang the roof of its mouth. The null field didn't blunt steel. Kill him, a lieutenant roared from the 50-yard line. Taller, heavier, crest of bone curving like a crown. 4 arms, 2 blades, a jaw full of needle teeth. Bring me his head. Naruto went to him like tied to shore. The lieutenant's phalanx tightened as he came, shields locking, blades overlaid, a moving wall of horn and iron. Barbed javelins whistled, Naruto batted them aside, 1 2 3, sparks stringing through the air. He hit the phalanx at a sprint, then wasn't there. He blinked past the front rank and erupted inside the pocket behind it, already turning. The tight space became a slaughterbox. His blade carved ribs and spines, claws opened bellies, blood fountained against the inside of their own shields. The wall collapsed inward on instinct. Naruto vaulted the falling bodies and came down in a split crouch at the lieutenant's feet. They traded in close. For arms scissored downward, Naruto met 2 with steel, slid one with his forearm, let the 4th glance his shoulder to buy space. He shoved, turned, chopped at a wrist. Bone fractured. The lieutenant hissed and bit, Naruto jammed his left hand into its mouth, grabbed the tongue, and ripped. It howled, he palmed its face and drove it backward, running at 3 strides before spiking it to the turf with his sword through the sternum. It clawed for his throat, even pinned. He caught its wrist, leaned weight, and watched the life drain from its eyes. The last thing it saw was his smile, cold, merciless, promising nothing. The elites faltered. For a breath the stadium hovered on the edge of flight. Naruto stood, kicked the corpse off his blade, and lifted the sword in one hand. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. A fresh wave came, not many, but wrong. Heavy footfalls that made the seats tremble. Something too big for the tunnels shouldered through a wall and reared, a titan with a centipede's body and a cathedral's worth of mouths. Its shadow swallowed half the pitch. That wasn't a lieutenant. That was a piece on the board that a cautious general doesn't spend lightly. The thing shrieked. The air rippled. Lesser demons around it clamped hands to their heads and dropped to their knees, nosebleeds spraying. Naruto broke into a sprint that turned into a streak. He hit its first foreleg and ran up it, boots finding purchase on chitin, blade punching holes like pitons. It snarled and tried to shake he leapt to the next plated section, then the next, climbing fast. A WHP of barbed tongue snaked from one mouth, he severed it on instinct and kept going. He hit the collar if a monster like this had a collar where plate met softer meat. He plunged the sword to the hilt and ripped. Black steam burst in a geyser. The Titan reared and slammed its shoulder into the scoreboard, ripping screens and sending a hail of glass across the field. Naruto was already moving. He sprinted along its back, cutting as he went, carving a trench that flooded with boiling corruption. The Titan lurched, he timed the sway and leapt. He landed in a roll, came up on one knee, and flung a crescent of condensed killing intent back over his shoulder. It hit like a guillotine. The Titan's head didn't so much fall as slide from its neck, drifting sideways before gravity caught it. The body stood 2 heartbeats longer out of reflex, then slumped like a building losing load-bearing walls. The turf shook. Shock rolled through the horde. He was swaying now, just a hair. Sweat stung his eyes. A cut on his thigh sang with every step. Don't stop. Don't give them a hole to climb through. He didn't. He ran at the next cluster. By the time the clock over the concourse died melted by something that should never melt a clock, the field was more grave than stadium. He had carved aisles through the dead. He had littered the tunnels with limbs. He had turned a demon orchestra into a silence so complete that his breathing sounded rude in it. He stood at midfield, blade down, tip digging a black furrow in the turf. He listened. Something laughed. Naruto tipped his head back. A presence leaned on the rim of the stadium, lounging with one knee cocked, phone in hand. He'd seen that grin once already this week and marked it for death. Janu's silhouette was clean against the washed-out sky, hair perfect, posture bored, eyes bright with something worse than malice. Impressive, Janu called, voice mocking light. You know how to make a mess. Naruto's blade angled. Where is she? Oh, Janu said, tilting his head as if trying to remember a name. Roomie. Trust me, you don't want to know. You'll have to run a few more errands before you get that answer. Naruto lifted the sword point in answer. Janu's eyes flicked toward the shadow under the scoreboard. But I do pay my debts. You wanted something worthy, right? The shadow moved. Not like a beast. Like a tide changing under a new moon. Something older than the city, older than the language the city used to name its fears, unrolled itself from the dark. Not Cthulhu as sailors write it, but the word you think when you don't have a word that fits. Its eyes opened like ship lanterns drowned 1,000 years ago. Its breath smelled like trenches and tombs. Naruto's skin prickled. Somewhere in his bones, a very old danger sense went still and said yes, this is the one that kills men. He moved anyway. Meanwhile, Seline pushed open the sliding door to Tomiyama's quarters, a tray of tea balanced in her hands. Commander, I brought. The words died on her tongue. Tomiyama lay slumped across his desk, eyes wide, his chest torn open where the blade had pierced. His BLD was already dark, cooling on the wood. For a heartbeat, the silence was unbearable. Then Seline's breath snapped free, ragged. No. She ran to him, fingers trembling as they pressed uselessly to the wound. But she knew. She'd seen too many bodies to mistake the stillness of death. Her voice broke as she shouted into the hall. Guards! Sound the alarm! The association erupted in chaos within moments. Boots thundered. Doors slammed. Voices cried out. Tokiyama is dead, someone screamed. Seal the gates, another ordered. Hunters swarmed, blades drawn, but the truth hit faster than orders could carry. One name cut through the din. Ayaka's gone. The word spread like fire. She's the only one missing. It was her she betrayed us. Seline's stomach turned to ice. She staggered back from Tomiyama's desk, her eyes falling on a stack of reports. The wax seal on one was broken, its parchment left open. She snatched it up and scanned the words. A false mission. Forged orders. Her breath caught. No gods, no. Naruto. She bolted for the door, shouting to anyone who would listen. It's a trap. Tokyo, he's been sent to Tokyo. Hunters froze, horror dawning on their faces. They scrambled to mount, to gather weapons, to prepare for a desperate chase. But before a single step could carry them out, the floor trembled. A crack ripped through the courtyard as shadows bled from the walls. The scent of sulfur hit first, then the sound guttural roars that didn't belong in this world. Demons. Not scattered packs, not lurking spirits. An army. Charging straight through the association gates. Hunters gasped, some faltered. The association's under attack. Seline stood rooted for a breath, her heart pounding. Never, not once in history, had the demons been bold enough to strike here. Until now. Her jaw set. She summoned her glaive into her hands, its edge glowing faint with her soul patterns. The air rippled around her as she spun it once, the motion clean, steady. She whispered, too soft for anyone but the gods to hear. Hold on, Naruto. We're coming. Then she surged forward into the onslaught, the clash of steel and claw ringing through the heart of the Hunters Association. By the time the clock over the concourse died, melted by something that should never melt a clock, the field was more grave than stadium. He had carved aisles through the dead. He had littered the tunnels with limbs. He had turned a demon orchestra into a silence so complete that his breathing sounded rude in it. He stood at midfield, blade down, tip digging a black furrow in the turf. He listened. Something laughed. Naruto tipped his head back. A presence leaned on the rim of the stadium, lounging with one knee cocked, phone in hand. He'd seen that grin once already this week and marked it for death. Janu's silhouette was clean against the washed-out sky, hair perfect, posture bored, eyes bright with something worse than malice. Impressive, Janu called, voice mocking light. You know how to make a mess. Naruto's blade angled. Where is she? Oh, Janu said, tilting his head as if trying to remember a name. Roomie. Trust me, you don't want to know. You'll have to run a few more errands before you get that answer. Naruto lifted the sword point in answer. Janu's eyes flicked toward the shadow under the scoreboard. But I do pay my debts. You wanted something worthy, right? The shadow moved. Not like a beast. Like a tide changing under a new moon. Something older than the city, older than the language the city used to name its fears, unrolled itself from the dark. Not Cthulhu as sailors write it, but the word you think when you don't have a word that fits. Its eyes opened like ship lanterns drowned 1,000 years ago. Its breath smelled like trenches and tombs. Naruto's skin prickled. Somewhere in his bones, a very old danger sense went still and said yes, this is the one that kills men. He moved anyway. Meanwhile, Seline pushed open the sliding door to Tomiyama's quarters, a tray of tea balanced in her hands. Commander, I brought, the words died on her tongue. Tomiyama lay slumped across his desk, eyes wide, his chest torn open where the blade had pierced. His BLD was already dark, cooling on the wood. For a heartbeat, the silence was unbearable. Then Seline's breath snapped free, ragged. No. She ran to him. Fingers trembling as they pressed uselessly to the wound. But she knew. She'd seen too many bodies to mistake the stillness of death. Her voice broke as she shouted into the hall. Guards! Sound the alarm! The association erupted in chaos within moments. Boots thundered. Doors slammed. Voices cried out. Tokiyama is dead, someone screamed. Seal the gates, another ordered. Hunters swarmed, blades drawn, but the truth hit faster than orders could carry. One name cut through the din. Ayaka's gone. The word spread like fire. She's the only one missing. It was her, she betrayed us. Seline's stomach turned to ice. She staggered back from Tomiyama's desk, her eyes falling on a stack of reports. The wax seal on one was broken, its parchment left open. She snatched it up and scanned the words. A false mission. Forged orders. Her breath caught. No gods, no. Naruto. She bolted for the door, shouting to anyone who would listen. It's a trap. Tokyo, he's been sent to Tokyo. Hunters froze, horror dawning on their faces. They scrambled to mount, to gather weapons, to prepare for a desperate chase. But before a single step could carry them out, the floor trembled. A crack ripped through the courtyard as shadows bled from the walls. The scent of sulfur hit first, then the sound guttural roars that didn't belong in this world. Demons. Not scattered packs, not lurking spirits. An army. Charging straight through the association gates. Hunters gasped, some faltered. The association's under attack. Seline stood rooted for a breath, her heart pounding. Never, not once in history had the demons been bold enough to strike here. Until now. Her jaw set. She summoned her glaive into her hands, its edge glowing faint with her soul patterns. The air rippled around her as she spun it once, the motion clean, steady. She whispered, too soft for anyone but the gods to hear. Hold on, Naruto. We're coming. Then she surged forward into the onslaught, the clash of steel and claw ringing through the heart of the Hunters Association. The living room of the penthouse glowed with morning light until the screen on the wall tore through it, flickering to life with breaking news. Tokyo blackout. The anchors' voices were frantic, the feed shaky. A massive power outage has swallowed the city. Eyewitnesses report violent earthquakes near Shinjuku. Storm systems have appeared out of nowhere, centered around a stadium. The footage hit. A helicopter shot the stadium swallowed by rolling black clouds, lightning splitting across its roof, the ground heaving as if the earth itself wanted to collapse. Roomie froze, her breath hitching. Her patterns lit at once, violet flaring like a beacon. No, that's him. That's Naruto. Mira was already on her feet, face taut. SHT. It is. That's exactly where he'd go. Zoe's hands shook, the rose giant had given her trembling between her fingers. We don't have time. He's in there, alone. Bobby appeared in the doorway, half-dressed and wide-eyed. What are you talking about? Him who? What are you? His eyes darted to the TV again. You're not saying he's in that, are you? Roomie tore past him, snatching her jacket. He is. And he needs us. Bobby blinked at her like she'd grown another head. Roomie, what the hell are you talking about? It's a blackout. Maybe an earthquake. You think your boyfriend just caused it? What are you even? Don't call him that. Roomie snapped, her voice breaking, raw with panic. He's more than that. She cut herself off, the words too sharp, too dangerous. Mira shoved her phone to her ear, already summoning the jet. We leave now. 10 minutes. Leave. Bobby's voice cracked. You've got Soul Dome tonight. Do you have any idea how many people are counting on you? Millions. You can't just. Zoe spun on him, her cheeks streaked with tears. He's dying, Bobby. Do you get that? Dying. Screw the concert. Bobby looked at all three of them, bewildered, like the world had tilted under his feet. What is going on with you? Blackouts, storms, dying. Roomie, are you seriously? You don't understand, and I don't have time to explain. He's out there fighting things you can't even imagine. And if we don't go now, we'll lose him. Her voice cracked at the end, but her resolve didn't. Bobby just stood there, frozen, watching as the three girls stormed past him into the hall, the elevator doors slamming shut behind them. He whispered into the silence, voice trembling with something like fear. What the hell are you all hiding from me? Naruto's breath shuddered as the figure took shape. Indra. Not sneering. Not lashing out. Just standing there, his long hair falling across his shoulders, his eyes burning like dying stars. And for the first time Naruto could remember, there was no malice in his smile. "Hello, little brother." Naruto staggered back, fists clenched as if a blade would come at any second. "Indra." But Indra didn't move to strike. Instead, he bowed his head, the faintest glimmer of relief softening the centuries of weight in his expression. "You freed me," he said simply. "When you cut me down, when you severed Jiaima's chains, you gave me what I thought I'd never have again. Rest." His voice was quieter now, almost human. "Do you know how long I had screamed in that cage? How long I begged for an end that never came?" Naruto's throat closed. He remembered the fight, the BLD, the way Indra's soul had burned as it finally slipped free. He had carried the weight of it ever since. "I hated you once," Indra admitted. "Despised you for everything you were, everything I was not. But you did what no one else could. You gave me peace." Naruto's voice cracked. "Then why am I seeing you now? I thought you were gone." Indra's gaze held steady. "Because you are breaking. And in this darkness, sometimes the only ones who find us are the ones we've let go." The void flickered around them as Naruto's chest heaved. Words spilled raw. "You don't get it. I had her Roomie. My North Star. And I let it slip. We fought." She held Janu's hand, smiled at him. His voice broke into a laugh, jagged and bitter, "I was jealous of a man who doesn't even have a soul. And then she said I abandoned my world. Like everything I bled for meant nothing. And now I'm here, broken, about to die, and she doesn't even know if I'm coming back." Indra knelt, his presence steady like a furnace in the cold. "So that's the truth. You fear losing her more than losing yourself." Naruto swallowed hard, whispering, "Because without her I'm nothing. Just a reaper with no soul." Indra gripped his shoulder. "Then take my soul." Naruto's head snapped up, eyes wide. Indra's expression was firm but gentle. "Let me anchor you. Let me be the strength you think you lack. My soul is already yours, you freed it. Let me carry you this time." Tears blurred Naruto's vision. He shook his head, violently. "No. No, I can't. If I take what's yours, if I let you burn for me, then I'm no better than the monsters we fight. I won't DMN you again." Indra smiled, soft, as if Naruto's refusal was the only answer he'd hoped for. He reached out, cupping Naruto's face, his thumbs brushing away the tears. "You're stronger than you believe," he said. "Even now, when you're on your knees, you'd rather suffer than let someone else pay your price. That's what makes you a Shura. That's why I was jealous of you." Naruto sobbed openly now, hands clutching desperately at Indra's fading arms. "Then don't leave me. Please. I still need you. I can't save her alone." Indra pressed his forehead to Naruto's, his smile unshaken even as his form unraveled into light. "You won't be alone. I'll be here in you, as you've always been in me." The warmth sank into Naruto's chest, a second heartbeat blazing crimson-violet, steady and unyielding. Naruto collapsed, forehead pressed to the empty void, his voice hoarse and breaking, "I'm sorry. I'll carry you. Always." Indra's final words drifted like a prayer, steady and tender. "Don't cry. I'm here. I'm here." And then he was gone. But Naruto wasn't empty. Janu sneered from the edge of the wrecked stage, arms folded, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. "So this is the Devourer." Collapsed in the dirt like a beaten dog. His voice dripped contempt, loud enough to echo through the ruined stadium. "Pathetic. End him." Cthulhu stirred. Its bulk blotted out the cracked lights above, a tide of shadow and storm wrapped in flesh. One vast tentacle reared back, dripping black ichor, and slammed downward with the weight of a mountain. The ground quaked. The stands buckled. Dust exploded into the air. And then the stadium went silent. Because the tentacle didn't land. It stopped, trembling, caught in a single hand. Naruto's. His body still bore the marks of battle-torn cloak, blstrkng his jaw, bruises blooming along his arms, but his grip was unshakable. His patterns no longer burned crimson, no longer wavered violet. They blazed with a new light, glowing deep and steady, pure purple, alive with something older, heavier, unyielding. Tears streaked his face, but his gaze wasn't broken. His eyes glowed not red, not human blue, but a piercing violet shot with starlight, the weight of Ashura and Indra burning together. He rose to his feet, dragging the writhing tentacle upward with him, his voice breaking the silence. "You won't touch her. Not now. Not ever." For the first time, Janu's smirk faltered. His breath caught, his chest tight. Those eyes weren't the eyes of a beaten man. They were something else. Something monstrous. Something eternal. And in that instant, Janu realized, he hadn't broken Uzumaki Naruto. He'd woken something far, far worse. The stadium lights flickered as Naruto's patterns flared brighter, swallowing the dark. The violet glow surged outward, wrapping him in a chakra cloak not crimson, not gold, but a deep, storming purple that hummed with the weight of two souls bound together. His hair lifted in the energy's rush, his aura crackling like thunder breaking through eternity. The fusion was seamless. Ashura's boundless will. Indra's relentless fury. His own unbreakable heart. 1. Naruto's body lifted off the shattered ground, cloak rippling like wings of light. As he rose, his hand opened and a black staff coalesced in his grip, humming with raw divinity. Behind him, 6 black orbs spun into being truth-seeking ball, yet darker, denser, as though forged from the void itself. Janu's breath froze. His sneer cracked into a grimace. "No." Naruto's voice cut through the air, quiet but absolute. "You wanted the Devourer." The orbs shot forward. Each slammed into Cthulhu like miniature suns, detonating with force that shook the city. Flesh tore, ichor spraying in rivers as the beast's scream rattled the stadium to its bones. Tentacles flailed, skyscraper-sized limbs thrashing against a power they couldn't bind. Naruto didn't give it a second to recover. He was already there, staff a blur as he smashed into the beast's chest. Bone cracked like thunder. He vanished and reappeared at its skull, staff cleaving down with divine weight. Before it could collapse, he twisted midair, cloak streaming, and hurled another orb straight through its throat, the explosion ripping a canyon down its body. Cthulhu writhed, its colossal form crumbling. Each retraction, each regeneration tried to knit it back together, but Naruto was already there, pounding, striking, ripping it apart faster than it could heal. Each blow landed with the fury of centuries. Each strike was Indra's precision, Ashura's fire, and Naruto's grief fused into one. The beast that no human could slay, the horror whispered in folklore, was being beaten into the earth by a boy who refused to die. Janu staggered back, hands trembling as he watched the impossible unfold. He had unleashed Cthulhu as the ace, the finisher, the reaper meant to end Naruto once and for all. Instead, he watched the Devourer become the nightmare that monsters feared. Cthulhu's roar turned to a gurgle as Naruto slammed his staff through its chest. Black orbs swirled around the wound, imploding inward, sucking the monster's flesh into nothing. The beast clawed at its own body, trying to wrench itself free from the pull, but Naruto's cloak blazed brighter violet fire threaded with streaks of black, and he twisted the staff, pouring everything into the strike. The implosion detonated. Cthulhu's torso collapsed inward, ribs snapping like trees, ichor spraying only to be swallowed into the void. Naruto blurred forward, staff lashing across its neck in a single clean slide. The head rolled, crashing into the stadium seats with a quake, but before it could twitch back to life, Naruto raised his hand. The 6 orbs fused into one. A black sun. He hurled it down with a roar that split the sky. The explosion swallowed the arena, turning concrete to dust, glass to sand, steel to ash. When the smoke cleared, Cthulhu's body was gone. Not torn. Not broken. Gone. Erased from existence. Only Naruto floated above the crater, cloak still blazing, chest heaving. His eyes, glowing purple, turned toward Janu. The Saja boy froze. He had dreamed of this moment. Uzumaki Naruto broken, bled dry, corpse left for Jiaima's glory. He had waited centuries. And yet now, his knees weakened, his throat went dry. Because what stared at him wasn't prey. It wasn't even an enemy. It was a god wearing a boy's skin. Naruto's voice carried across the silence, calm and merciless. Your beast is gone. There's nothing left to hide behind. He drifted closer, staff scraping against the ground with each step, sparks spitting where it touched. You wanted me dead. You called demons, storms, gods to kill me. But I'm still here. His eyes narrowed, his aura pressing down like the weight of oceans. And you? You're nothing but Jiaima's dog. Janu stumbled back, sweat cold on his brow. He had never feared death before, not when he sold his soul, not when he killed to live another day. But now, under that gaze, he realized the truth. The Devourer wasn't a title. It was a promise. Janu's legs gave out as Naruto stalked forward, each step making the stadium floor groan. The staff dragged behind him, carving a line in the concrete, the glow of his cloak throwing monstrous shadows across the ruin. Please, Janu stammered, his back slamming into a broken wall. His hands flew up like a child pleading with fire. It wasn't me. It was Jiaima. He made me do it. You know what he is. You know how he binds us. His voice cracked, desperation spilling like bile. If I had a choice, I would have never. Naruto's gaze didn't waver. Cold. Unblinking. Unmoved. Then, from the wrecked entrance, a voice ripped through the chaos. Naruto. The sound cracked through him like lightning. His head whipped toward it, and there she was. Roomie, her patterns glowing faint violet even through her tears, stumbled into the ruin with Mira and Zoey at her back. She froze at the sight before her. Naruto haloed in violet fire, the world split open around him, Janu cowering like a beaten child. Her voice trembled, breaking on his name. North Star. Naruto's eyes softened just for her. The weight in his shoulders shifted, his breath catching as if, for a moment, she was the only thing anchoring him. And in that breath, Janu's smirk returned. The faint creak of a bowstring echoed from the shadows above. An arrow split the air, glowing with seals. Naruto half-turned, but too late. The arrow slammed into his throat. For a heartbeat, there was silence. The glow in his cloak sputtered, flickering wildly. Then the seal flared, exploding in a burst of concussive force that shook the ground. Naruto's body hit the rubble, limp. The staff clattered beside him, shattering into light. His cloak fizzled out, leaving only smoke rising from his form. No! Roomie screamed, her patterns blazing as she lurched forward, only for Mira to grab her arm and yank her back. Janu straightened, brushing the dust from his clothes, eyes gleaming with triumph as the smoke cleared. You see, Roomie? He's not a god. He bleeds. He falls. Naruto's chest heaved once, barely, his lips parting just enough for a broken whisper to slip through. North Star. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 9. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.